what can be said about the Punisher that hasn't already been said? He is one of comics' most famous anti-heroes and sparked the idea of a comic crime fighter who isn't afraid to kill their enemies in cold blood. First appearing in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 129, written by Jerry Conway and illustrated by John Romita Sr. and Ross Andru, Punisher, also known as Frank Castle, became a huge success, later appearing in Captain America and Daredevil series, the latter of whom would become the Punisher's foil many times in the future due to their conflicting ideals, and eventually he earned his own series in 1986. The character is loved by many due to the grittiness he portrays and the realism shown in his stories. This influence is so strong that many are inspired to wear his symbol, a white skull on a black background, to show their love. However, the problem lies in that there are those who would use the symbol recklessly, not thinking of what the symbol means and how it could be interpreted. One of the most recent examples was back in February of 2017, when a group of police officers in Kentucky placed an amalgam of the Punisher's skull and the Blue Lives Matter logo on the hood of their cruisers. This immediately sparked outrage in the community, as they had interpreted the police as saying that they were out for blood, and reprimanded the officers for using the logo of a fictional mass murderer. A spokesperson for Thin Blue Line USA, a company responsible for the distribution of Blue Lives Matter paraphernalia, responded in saying that the logo doesn't mean one of violence anymore, but more of a promise that criminals won't get away with what they do. First off, that is literally one of the most ridiculous explanations I've ever heard. As a huge fan of the Punisher and one who has read many of his stories, he is not someone that the police should model themselves after. He's a vigilante, someone who works outside of the law, believing that it to be inadequate, and the only way to deal with a dangerous criminal is to kill them. The police are supposed to believe in the judicial system and a fair trial, and to wear the logo of a character who believes in the law, that the law is a joke, is not the way to go about it. And of course he's still violent. Punisher's logo will always attribute to the violence he portrays. In a 2010 run of the Punisher Max series, one filled with sex, gore, and violence galore, Punisher tortured a dirty cop by cutting pieces off of him until he gave him the answers he wanted, even threatening to cut off a piece below the belt. I could go on telling even more moments where the Punisher was absolutely brutal to his enemies, but the list is extensive. Even later that year, the Punisher's skull was seen at the Charlottesville riots being worn by the Aryan supporters. Let's get one thing clear. Punisher does not kill based on the color of people's skins. He kills based on the actions of others. Punisher has been shown murdering Nazi supporters in several of his comic runs, so in no way should his symbol be associated with anything based on racism. Even actor John Bernthal, the guy who made it his job to be the Punisher in Daredevil Season 2 and the Punisher Netflix series, spoke out against the alt-right movement with some very simple but moving words. "Fuck them," he said. Punisher's logo should represent what the character stands for, the absolute annihilation of the enemy, and shouldn't be twisted for a movement that does not relate to it, whether it is good or bad. The only fitting appropriation of the Punisher skull would be from the military, since Frank Castle served in the Vietnam War and the Marine Corps. He has strong roots with the U.S. military, especially with Navy SEAL Chris Kyle and his platoon. Kyle's platoon placed the logo on their jeeps and their flak jackets, their helmets, and even spray painted it everywhere they went in Iraq to let the enemy know that they were out there. Now it has become a symbol for the fight against ISIS, and hundreds of Marines and soldiers proudly display the skull on their gear and weapons. The logo is meant to spread fear to the terrorists that they are not there to capture them, but to kill and prevent them from hurting anyone else. Again, the total destruction of the enemy.